Welcome to the Shootin' Show. Stand by for shots fired.
Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and welcome again to this week's TV show about guns. We've had such a great response from everyone. In fact, we had a couple of our viewers stop by and do some shooting with me yesterday, and we all had a great time. We have a good show for you. Heck, I think it's a great show for you. We have a piece on hunting. We have just a lot of different things. So let's begin today's Shootin' Show with some shooting. You know, friends, we're going to talk about something really important, in fact, today before we get started shooting, and this is your basic target. Now, those of us who want to be better marksmen, or at least want to find out where our handgun or long gun or whatever else is shooting, we need a decent target. And you can tell that this one is pretty well shot up, and what we need is a clean piece of paper, and we need some masking tape to go with that. Masking tape is real important. We're going to get to that in just a second. But let me show you how easy this is. I have some paper here, just plain brown paper that we got off a roll from a paper company, and I want you to see just how easy this is. Now, what we've done, friends, I have cut a piece of this paper to roughly the equivalent of our cardboard backing here. So what we're going to do, just very simply, this is so simple yet so important. And what we're going to do is just tape it on in the front of our target that's already shot. Now, we have some cardboard behind this, but believe me, it's really shot up. So you can leave the formerly shot target in place. It stiffens your backing just a little bit. So let's do that now. The point I want to make here is this is so easy and so simple to do. You don't have to go to a lot of expense or a lot of time having very finely drawn targets. You can freehand them. So let's get our paper in place where it'll be secure. We've got a little wind on the range today. Of course, it is March. It's windy every March. All right, now then, we want to keep our masking tape, and we'll retrieve that in just a minute. Yeah, it's windy. We want to keep our masking tape handy so we can patch any bullet holes that we shoot in the target. So the next time we shoot, we're going to know when and where we didn't hit. So let's take our marker now, and let's just freehand some circles. All right, there's one. And you know, that's fine for our purposes, what we're doing. Let's put a couple more. And of course, on your own target, you can put circles any place you want to. But it makes it a little more challenging using some bigger targets and then some smaller. And if you want to, you can even give score. You can say, well, it's 1 point for hitting the larger target. It's 2 or 3 points for hitting your smaller target, for a little informal competition. So we're going to put some paper up on our target next to us here, and we'll have another fresh one. But this is just a point I wanted to make. It's so simple and so important to have a basic target that you can use. And again, when you shoot it, we'll take a little masking tape and put over the holes so we know where we shot before and after. Now, friends, we opened the program a few minutes ago with this little Marlin. This is an 1894S. And it's in 44 Magnum chambering. And I'll tell you what, I have a new respect for the lever action guns. As you saw in last week's program, it was so effective in rapid aimed fire when we shot our 30-30 Winchester against the SKS 7.6239. But this particular lever action is in the 44 Magnum. Now, on last week's program, we showed you the 44 Magnum in the Ruger single action. And this is a great companion gun. You can have the single action on your hip in 44 Magnum, and it can have interchangeable ammunition in the lever gun. Now this Marlin has, it's a later model, and it has a crossbolt safety right here on the back of the receiver. So what happens is when you push the safety in place, and it's clearly marked, you have a red showing on the safety bar there, or the safety plunger, and it will only let the hammer go so far down, and it would prevent inadvertent firing of the gun if you had the some sort of slip with the trigger or hammer or whatever, if that safety is in place. Now these guns I don't like to carry with one chamber, but I like to carry the magazine full, but any safety device, as long as it's well thought out, may be a worthwhile addition. Now this little gun has a side ejection as compared to the Winchester, which ejects from the top, and it is extremely reliable, and this is just one of the neatest little guns that I have ever picked up to shoot. And trust me on this one, it makes the 44 Magnum quite a bit stronger. You get full advantage of the powder in the 44 Magnum cartridge that the shorter barrels in the handguns can't take advantage of. The same load that runs about 1,330 feet per second out of the handgun here run about 1,800 out of the Marlin here, the 1894S. And I'm going to guess this is about a 20-inch barrel, and I really should measure that, but it looks like about 20 inches to me. But this little gun handles so well. It is a convenient size. I guess you would call this carbine, certainly. And the 44 Magnum, it really becomes a serious hunting gun. This would be an excellent gun for deer or black bear. And believe it or not, the 44 Magnum is a little bit stronger in some loadings than the 30-30 Winchester up close. Now, the 30-30 does catch it and pass it out at about 100 yards because of your ballistic coefficients. And one, this bullet is bigger, it just doesn't go through the air as well as the much smaller 30 caliber. But it really shoots good. It will go into 2 to 3 inches on a good day if yours truly is holding the gun well at 100 yards, and really has all the accuracy that you need for a shorter range carbine like this. This little gun has a lot in common with its Winchester counterpart. They're on the same principle of a lever to eject the spent round and load a fresh one into the chamber, but it is made differently. In fact, this particular gun is made on a little different pattern than the Marlin 336 action. I'll tell you what though, friends, a lot of us in recent years have overlooked the lever action in a lot of different areas. They're fast, they're certainly accurate enough for hunting, way beyond accurate enough for defense or home defense, whatever you want to do with it. But we have really enjoyed shooting this little gun since we've had it. Now friends, to load our Marlin, very much like our Winchester, you take the bullet and you put it in the spring-loaded gate here in the sight. Press it all the way in, and this particular gun holds 10, and I tell you, that's a lot of potent ammunition. 10 44 Magnums in one of these guns. We're shooting some of the new, at least new to me, Remington 180 grain factory ammunition, and in this particular gun, we chronographed it earlier, and this 180 grain bullet goes almost 2,200 feet per second out of this little Marlin carbine. Now that's impressive performance. All right, friends, let's put in one more bullet for a total of 3 and take a look at it in recoil. This little gun does have some recoil. It's not painful, but you certainly know it went off. The 44 Magnum in a handgun certainly has some recoil. A lot of it is soaked up by your wrist and your elbows, and of course your upper arms. But on the rifle, it's pretty much stationary into your shoulder. So it's a potent cartridge. It does have a little kick. It is not objectionable, but it's just something to be aware of. All right, we're going to push our safety off, and let's take a few shots with it. And lever our lever. And 3 quick shots, and we know, and yes, it is empty. That's 3 quick shots with a lot of power. I'll tell you what, friends, this is definitely a little gun. If you're looking for an all-purpose rifle, if your hunting distances are not that terribly far away, 100, 150 yards, with a 44 Magnum cartridge, I'd prefer to keep it probably under 125 yards, for not so much as for the power of the cartridge, but for trajectory's sake. But these little guns, they can be scoped, they are accurate, and they're an awful lot of fun to shoot. This would be an excellent alternative, as we talked about on last week's program, for a police rifle. You have 10 in the magazine. Be a wonderful home defense gun. They're extremely reliable. You can shoot the milder loads as well as the higher power loads in these little marlin carbines, and I would assume it would probably shoot 44 specials just for mild target practice. But again, this is a fine little gun for us to take a look at for a lot of reasons. They're not that terribly expensive. They're extremely well made. This is the little Marlin 1894S.
It's fast. It's exciting. It's challenging. It's fun. This is the USPSA, United States Practical Shooting Association, the fastest growing sport in America today. If you'd like to become more proficient and confident with your firearm, meet new and interesting people, and compete with thousands around the world, join the USPSA. There's a local chapter near you.
I was only gone for a minute.
I didn't realize it might be dangerous.
I never thought something might happen.
Whatever the excuse for an accident in the home, the result, unfortunately, is the same. Hi, I'm Grits Gresham, and believe me, if you just take a moment to make absolutely sure guns are unloaded and secured in a safe place, you'll never have to make an excuse for a gun accident in your home. This message is a public service of this station and the National Shooting Sports Foundation.
The Shooting Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or television station.
This video is dedicated to the past, present, and future volunteer instructors of North America who teach hunter education programs, saving lives with a positive impact on our environment. Partial funding provided by the United Conservation Alliance. Our goal is your personal safety while you are shooting or hunting in the field.
This is Houston.
Roger, thank you.
With this view of the Earth, the landmass is showing up better now than it was a few minutes ago.
Right, Bruce, you can really see looks like the New England states are kind of clobbered in there.
Right.
But the main part of it's coming in real good. Again, you can see the Great American Desert, the Rocky Mountains, and the Sierra Nevadas there.
What a beautiful view.
Roger, you're on the window. Are you trying a yaw maneuver?
I'm trying a yaw maneuver, and I'm on the window. It's such a fascinating view out the window, you just can't help but look out that way.
Houston, what you're seeing is the Western Hemisphere. Looking at the top is the North Pole.
America's discovery, exploration, and settlement reveal the most varied natural resources known. Early European settlers depended on America's abundant and diverse wildlife for food and clothing. For 200 years, wildlife and frontier America existed together. However, by the beginning of this century, unrestricted harvest and habitat destruction threatened much of our wildlife legacy. Recognizing this plight, American ingenuity and innovation created the most successful program of wildlife conservation in the world. We are demonstrating that if people value wildlife and demand proper management, we can maintain an abundant and diverse American legacy for future generations.
The hunters and their prey. It's been nature's way since the dawn of time. Man is a predator too, just as surely as the bear or the mountain lion. The role of man as hunter is just as important to the balance of nature as the role of any other creature who hunts. We've come to Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming to take a look at how man has affected the natural world around him. Now, simply by being here, we alter the balance of nature in some small way. We're going to raise some thoughtful questions. Hopefully we'll answer some others. Let's get started. With a little help from some rather colorful characters out of the pages of our history books, we're going to show you how past Americans played an important role in the conservation and proliferation of many wild species, as well as some of the mistakes we Americans have made in the past. Hi, guys.
Hi.
All righty, where's everybody from?
St. Louis.
Miami. Texas. Houston.
Chicago.
The Windy City.
No, man, the Chicago Bulls, the Bears, the Cubs.
The Cubs and the Bears, too, okay. Anybody see a pattern here?
No.
Well, you're all from the city or the suburbs. 75% of you are educated in urban areas today.
So?
So, 60 years ago, most of you have been going to school out in small towns or out in the country.
My grandfather worked on a ranch near Salinas. My father went to school there. My grandfather raised wheat.
So what's the point?
Well, the point is that farmers and people in small towns, they lived closer to the land. They'd have gardens and they raised chickens, hogs, even in town. And often they would hunt for deer, wild birds, ducks. Frequently they had to hunt just to keep predators away from their crops, from their farm animals.
That's gross. Besides, we don't have to kill animals anymore.
You think not? Well, now, when you go to your favorite hamburger stand, where do you think the meat in that bun comes from?
It comes from the Hamburgers Company warehouse.
Yeah, well, all right, yes, but I mean, before that, where does it come from?
They come from the slaughterhouse. Before that, it's a cow in the stockyard. I've seen them before. Somebody has to kill the cows.
I'm never gonna eat meat again.
Well, that's not really an answer. That's your privilege, and that's your right if that's what you want to do. But you see, we're not really dealing with a problem here. It's more like a difference in attitude. I think it's time for you guys to meet a special guest. Someone who rode this land and took what he needed from nature almost 200 years ago.
The buffalo are my people's life, our blood, our strength, and our spirit. We hunt the buffalo for everything we use in our villages. The hair from his back gives us fine, warm robes. His hide makes our lodges and our clothing. And his flesh is the greatest feast a man can eat. And his sinew gives us strong thread to sew with. And even his stomach gives us water buckets and bags. To my people, to hunt is to live at its best. And to live life at its best is to be a hunter. To feel the wind in one's hair and to have respect for the animals that we take with our arrows and our lances. Good things happen to people who live as my people do. The Great Spirit looks well upon us. To hunt the buffalo from the back of a horse is to feel close to the Great Spirit himself. Okay.
To the Plains Indian, the buffalo is a veritable supermarket on the hoof. But even in our friend's day, man often unwittingly altered the balance of nature. The horse that the Plains Indian used so skillfully to hunt with only came to North America in the 1500s with European explorers. And the life of the mounted hunter-warrior only lasted from the late 1700s to the mid-1870s, less than 100 years.
buffalo is like my mom going to the supermarket to get a hamburger. What's wrong with that?
When he eats buffalo burgers, he knows where it comes from.
They didn't have buffalo burgers then.
Maybe not. But the important thing is that hunting not only made the Plains Indian self-sufficient, but it involved him in the balance of nature. It's all part of a natural process.
It still seems gross.
You eat turkey for Thanksgiving, don't you?
Yeah?
Where do you think that turkey comes from?
From the turkey farm.
That's right. Somebody has to kill those turkeys. You know, the Plains Indians believed that a good hunt paid a tribute to nature, that it was almost like becoming a part of nature. But sometimes even the Plains Indians had to use whatever means possible to complete a hunt. Before the introduction of the horse, buffalo hunting was usually a case of stampeding the herd off of cliffs and finishing off the survivors with lances and arrows. Unfortunately, buffalo herds, which could sometimes number in the millions, couldn't be controlled any better than a prairie fire. At the cliffs near Sun River in Montana, buffalo bones from pre-horse hunts cover almost 5 acres at a depth of several feet in thickness. Scientists estimate that almost 2.5 million buffalo were killed in the Sun River jump alone. Even a hunter as close to nature as the Plains Indian inadvertently misused his environment. But the horse changed all of that for the better. Now the Plains people could harvest only what they needed and not unnecessarily destroy other animals or habitats. For most of the early 1800s, the beaver hat was all the rage of gentlemanly fashion, and the trapping of beaver became a thriving industry. Now, this booming business gave rise to one of the most rugged and independent groups of outdoorsmen that this country's ever witnessed, the mountain man.
This child sure loves them shining mountains. Everything a beaver like me would want in a country to live in. Came out here in 22, I did, with Ashley. And 'tweren't no more than a sprout like yourselves. Been up here ever since. Went back to St. Louis once. Not 2,000 folks living there now. It just crowds my hide a little, and I can't stand being around as many pork eaters.
What's a pork eater?
Well, that's city folk, youngin'. You know, those folks sitting there eating all those pigs and sheep and such? Can't stand it. You know, you never catch this child eating such poor pickings. Why, the shining times is sitting down to a feast of elk and grouse and such. You know, trapping beaver's what brought me to these here mountains. But it's the shining way of life that's going to keep me here. This year, beaver's down to $1 a pelt in the east. Next year, it might be $5 a pelt. But it don't make no never mind to me, because this child's his own king up here in these mountains, and only the grizzly bear is stronger, and a mountain cat is faster than this here trapper.
By 1835, most of the streams and rivers of the Rockies were trapped out. At the height of the beaver trade era, perhaps 12,000 beaver pelts a year were being trapped. But by 1835, less than 1,000 were sent to the east. Silk hats were all the rage now, and the mountain man was becoming an endangered creature himself. In the 18th century, the world's resources seemed endless. No one could even comprehend that there was an end to the beaver and the buffalo, any more than seeing an end to the sky and the stars.
Well, this child might have to go guiding them pork-eating pilgrims down around this Great Salt Lake. Beaver's rubbed out for sure, that's for certain.
Acting as scouts for wagon trains of settlers heading west was just what some trappers wound up doing. The new country that the hunters of the mountains discovered became roads to the modern cities and developments most of us live in today. Nature is always changing and adapting, and hunters have often been at the forefront of those changes. As we've learned new things about our natural surroundings, hunters have learned to incorporate these things, helping nature to recover from man's own excesses. Civilization, the ownership of land. The settlers, ranchers, and farmers brought that concept west with them. The buffalo were killed off as much to provide pasture for cattle as to help end the brutal Indian wars. And with the passing of the buffalo, the Plains Indians' way of life came to an end. But with the settling of the land, there also came a new thoughtfulness, as the ranchers and farmers looked at the vanishing wilderness around them.
I remember this young fellow that came out here and wore glasses. We called him Four Eyes. And that was something until we took him on the first elk hunt. And I asked him, I said, how many shells did you bring? He says, one. Well, I looked at him like he was a crazy tenderfoot, and I said, one shell, what if you miss? Well, he looked at me and with a strange look on his face, and he says, well, you don't say anything like that. Well, do you know who he was?
No. No. No.
Our president, Teddy Roosevelt. He got his elk out here with one shot.
President Teddy Roosevelt, who started our parks, was a hunter?
Yes, he was one of the brightest fellows I ever met. He said we ought to start looking out for the animals.
What do you mean by that?
I'm glad you asked that. Teddy had a real good idea.
What kind of idea?
Well, Teddy got back at the east and got with his hunting buddies, and he said we need to manage the wildlife.
So what did they do?
Well, they talked to scientists and formed a club. Well, so Teddy figured that if we got the hunters to take the extra animals, we could manage the area and keep a healthy population. They knew that Mother Nature's pretty unforgiving. See, if you got a grazing spot for 100 elk, and there's 200 elk in there, soon you won't have any elk. None of them get enough to eat, and they starve to death. Folks don't realize elk don't know to stop grazing until there's nothing left for any of them. Old Teddy and his friends figured having hunters take the extra elk was better than having them die the hard and the slow, painful death, starvation.
Not only would those elk or any other foraging herd animal starve, but by their overgrazing, they would bring about the ultimate death of virtually every other living creature and the destruction of their habitat. This overgrazing would severely and often permanently alter or destroy the entire ecological system in the area. Where once there had been bountiful fields and shrubbery, there would only be desert remaining.
The club that his friend Teddy Roosevelt helped start was the Boone and Crockett Club, and it was the first organization to actively study and implement game conservation practices in the United States. Teddy Roosevelt remained an active conservationist and hunter all of his life. We can thank President Roosevelt and past hunters for starting our National Park Service and for preserving the federal forests that all Americans now enjoy using.
Today, the hunters of North America number in the tens of millions. Along with other concerned citizens and organizations, the hunters of North America, through their work, donations, and self-imposed taxes, make sure that funds are available to protect and manage our wildlife. And without question, today's hunters contribute more to the well-being of wildlife and the conservation of its habitat than any other group. Through organizations like the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited, Quail Unlimited, and National Wild Turkey Federation, millions of dollars have been raised for the restoration of animal populations and habitat. Other organizations, like the Safari Club International, Putting People First, and Buckmaster's Project Venison, have donated thousands of pounds of nutritious game meat to help feed needy and homeless families. To help these groups and the non-hunting population better understand each other, the United Conservation Alliance was started. The UCA informs people of the importance of conservation and how we all play a role in the balance of nature. What the United Conservation Alliance has done, and what we must continue to do, is learn, educate, and inform one another about man and animals living together.
Well, guys, what do you think? Did you learn something today?
Even though I don't think it's something I want to do, I can see where hunting is necessary. If it weren't for hunters, we wouldn't be able to enjoy wild animals at all.
It's okay. Not everybody likes to fish or ski. But people need to have the freedom to do things that they enjoy.
And hunters help benefit others.
How do hunters help me and my family if we don't hunt?
That's a good question. Well, it's just like it was in Teddy Roosevelt's day. If it weren't for hunters, there wouldn't be any wildlife conservation in this country today. It's because sportsmen contribute in so many ways that we have more wildlife in more parts of the U.S. than any time in the last 100 years.
Really?
And more people enjoy wildlife because of hunters. There are more people photographing and observing wildlife today than ever before. In fact, people who enjoy the outdoors but don't hunt outnumber hunters almost 5 to 1.
Who pays for the forest and the rangers who manage it?
Well, actually, hunters pay for over 90% of all wildlife conservation programs. Every time a hunter buys his yearly license, or a rifle, or a box of ammunition, a portion of that goes to wildlife management. Since 1950, over $11 billion have been contributed by hunters and shooters to conservation efforts.
11 billion. That's a lot of baby deer.
That's a lot of baby deers, a lot of baby elk, baby bears, baby wolves, too. Because No. You tell me. Somebody make a guess.
You have to keep nature at its balance?
Very good. That's right. You can't just say, gee, this animal is cute and cuddly, so he's good, and this one looks mean, so we don't want to help protect him and steady him. And hunters make all this possible.
This here buffalo hump's pretty near ready.
I thought buffalo are extinct.
No, because old mountain men like Brigand and ranchers like O'Malley, hunters like Teddy Roosevelt, because they stepped in, we now have a healthy population of buffalo in this country. In the 1890s, there were fewer than 500 buffalo left. But because these old-time hunters stepped in to preserve them, we now have over 100,000 buffalo in this country alone.
This is good.
It's good for you, too. It has less fat and less cholesterol than a hamburger does. I'm glad you were able to join us for our little tour of America's hunting and conservation past. I hope we've shown you how hunters have taken the lead in correcting some of the mistakes of the past, and how we all have forests and wildlands to enjoy, particularly because of the efforts and contributions of the American hunter. Thank you for joining us.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or television station. And now, friends, we're going to take a look at a new product, at least it's new to me, from the fine people who made this wonderful hunting piece possible for our program.
The long gun holster was invented to chase quail and pheasant around the state of Kansas. As it turned out, once we got it invented, we found out it's like having three hands, because whether you're glassing for deer, you're waiting on your hunting buddy, or waiting on your dog, about 85% of the time that you have a long gun in your hand, be it a deer rifle or a shotgun, you're waiting on somebody, your buddy, your friends, or what. You kick the holster around to the front pocket. It's totally weightless, totally controlled, but yet totally safe. As a result, you're always ready. Before you take that first step and go walking, you pull the holster to the side like you were wearing a sidearm. You wear a good wide second belt, okay? Once to the side, when you pull the firearm in, the firearm sets in your hand. You're not carrying and holding, you're rather balancing. Should you ever start to fall, whatever direction, you've got a free hand to stop it, all the while controlling the muzzle of that firearm. The deer hunter and elk hunter out in Colorado have taught us, Greg, trading the firearms here, have taught us when you have a mountain or a hill or a rock slide that you need all four hands to get up, what they do is pull the firearm behind them, duck inside their sling, set the firearm back in the holster. They've now got all four hands to get up a mountain. You'll notice that their hands are free, but should they need the firearm very quickly, if their target should suddenly appear, it's a matter of reaching around, lifting on the firearm, bending at the waist, knocking your head off, but you've still got a shot. Sports doctor, weightlifter, surgeon taught us you carry a 10-pound gun for 4 miles. That's normally a morning of walking. Because of the impact of starting back and forth, this 10-pound firearm will turn into 140,000 pounds of iron and wood or plastic pumped. This 12-pound shotgun here, 6-pound shotgun, carried 4 miles, turns out to 96,000 pounds. The little bones, the little muscles are not intended to do that type of exercise. That's why once the butt of the firearm is put in the holster, all of the impact of the firearm goes down to the big bones and the big muscles, which can easily handle it. This can't. The long gun holster wipes out the 1-2 way that man has found to kill himself with a long gun. He's either walking, and as he is walking, he drops the firearm, discharges. That kills on average about 65 people a year in the United States. Another 50 on average are walking, stumble, fall, and either reach instinctively with their hands this way or come back this way and end up in front of that muzzle and kill themselves. The third most common way that people kill themselves with a firearm is in upland game hunting. After about a half hour, the gun is in every position but up, safe, and controlled. As a result, people, once they tire, after about 30 to 35 minutes, become so tired that the gun is totally out of position. If a bird or a buck does flush, instinct, automatic, throw the gun up and shoot. They don't check what's beyond their target, and as a result, another hunter gets blasted with a shotgun blast, or a high-power round goes through a house a mile away. The long gun holster with this here wipes out the third most common killer that we choose to call brain deadness, because fatigue has not set in, the muzzle is up, safe, controlled, and with the holster on, people have told us that they think safety all 4-8 hours that they're in the field. We've all been to the field and seen this situation. Somebody walking behind us, looking up the muzzle, and which one of us haven't been hunting with someone else and walked right into that situation, looking down the wrong end of a high power or a shotgun. You wouldn't go and get in an automobile and drive without putting on a safety belt. You wouldn't climb a mountain without a safety belt, and you won't fly in an airplane without a safety belt. Why would you go hunting without a safety belt that only costs $19.95 plus $4 shipping and handling? It could save your life. You're safer from yourself because you're not going to fall on the firearm. Your hunting companions that you're hunting with are a lot safer being around you because you're not brain dead.
To order your butt buddy, call Long Gun Holster at 1-800-345-2195.
Now, friends, the semi-automatic pistol that I'm holding here is a new model from Smith & Wesson. This is the 411. It is an 11-shot in .40 caliber, and it is a double-action semi-automatic handgun. The first round, and we're going to check it, we know, yes, it is empty. Push the safety off. The first round is fired like a double-action revolver, and then it's going to cock itself when the slide comes back, and the second round will be fired single action. Now, on any of the double-action automatics, we need to talk about this for a second. There is a disparity of the trigger pull from the long trigger pull of the first shot to the short trigger pull of the second shot. Now, as compared to our standard single action pistol, such as this Colt 1991, and let's check it too. You know me, I'm going to be safe. If I'm safe, I won't have to be sorry. And we know it is unloaded. And of course, your single action pistol only fires from hammer cock position, like so. So the two are different mechanisms. They require a different shooting training. The single actions are a lot easier to learn to shoot well. However, some of the police jurisdictions and a lot of citizens are not comfortable with a cocked and locked gun such as our single action Colt, cocked with the safety locked on. Some of the various administrations prefer a gun to be on safe with the hammer down, and that's the reason for the double action automatic. They do require more training because, you know, what happens, and a lot of police officers now are having accidents. They've been used to carrying revolvers or something else. They're switching over to the double action semi-automatic, and what happens is this. They'll push the safety off and shoot the gun one time, and of course the next round the hammer's cocked, and then they have the much shorter trigger pull, and if they're nervous or excited, if they had to get their gun out and shoot at something or heaven forbid, but someone, whatever, the hammer is always going to be cocked on these things until you decock them with the safety, or on some other models you manually ease the hammer forward like so. Now then, what's happening, they shoot the gun, the hammer's cocked, they put it back in the holster, and bang, if they snag the trigger, because it doesn't take much to set them off. If these things are in a cocked position, it doesn't take much pressure at all to set the gun off. And this is something, it is a cause of a lot of accidents today. They're going back in the holster and they're shooting themselves in the leg or foot or wherever else, and it's just a lack of training and lack of understanding how these guns work. Now, a little procedure that I think is very important that I personally have developed just for me, I certainly didn't develop it originally, but I have developed this technique for me, is every time, if I'm shooting one of these guns, before I start to put it down or put it back in the holster, I'll check that safety every time, no exceptions. Before I holster it, it's a training drill. Whether I'm dry firing or shooting live ammunition makes no difference. Every time I start to put the gun down or in the holster, I will flip that safety on, or in the case of a decocking lever, I will decock it. Every time I go to the holster. And this can prevent accidents. And you know, friends, shooting is just no fun at all if you have an accident, if you hurt yourself or hurt something valuable to you, or certainly hurt someone else. So this is something that is so important that we cannot stress enough. These double action automatics do take a little more training, certainly than a revolver, in safety procedures. And one thing, of course, you have one method of operation here on the single actions, and you just have to learn that. On the double action, you have two different conditions you have to learn. One is firing from a hammer down and then coping with the hammer in the single action cock position on your next shot. Now typically these guns are a little harder to shoot fast and well for the first couple of shots. So if you're going to get a double action automatic, you're going to have to spend more time at the range, because for your sake and your family's sake and everyone else around you, you need to learn how to use these pistols safely. Now then, all that said, I would like to say this. This Smith & Wesson 411 is a compact handgun. It holds 11 in the magazine. You have a total of 12 shots. It has an aluminum frame. It has a blue steel slide. And I tell you what, friends, this is as good a double action automatic as I have ever fired. It is accurate. For the 40 caliber it's in, it is powerful. You can get 40 caliber cartridges now that run up to about 1,300 feet per second with 130, 135 grain bullet. You can load the 150 or 155 grain bullets up to about 1,200 feet per second. Well, see, you're bumping on 357 Magnum territory with that kind of velocities. If handled properly, these are very, very fine handguns to own and shoot. They just take a little more time and practice in learning the mechanism. But this gun cycles extremely well. It has been 100% reliable with a number of different types of bullets. And so let's take a look at it shooting and see what you think. Now then, friends, we're going to load this gun. It holds 11 in the magazine, as I said earlier. And one of the beauty parts, and of course we load it in the base of the magazine well here and be sure it's snapped all the way in place. One of the beauty parts about this 411, these guns normally retail, the 40 caliber Smith & Wessons retail about $600 or so. They're pretty expensive handguns. Well, this 411 is quite a bit cheaper. It's down, in some places I've seen them less than $500 in the $400 plus range, and they're very fine bargains for what they are. Smith & Wesson has a tremendous service policy. They will take care of their customers and shooters. So this is really a concept that I think is overdue. A quality handgun. It's pretty much a no-frills handgun. It has fixed sights. It has a safety lever on the left side, but that's fine. It's a good shooting and accurate handgun, certainly for the money. So let's take a look over here and see what it looks like in recoil. Now then, friends, to load the gun, you know me, pull that slide all the way back and let it go. Now then, we're going to push our safety off, and let's take a couple of shots with it. First shot will be double action. See, that wasn't much recoil. We're shooting 180 grain bullets. Let's take a couple more shots. Of course, these will be single action now. And of course, put the safety on and decock it. All right, even though it decocks itself safely, we still keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. We just don't take chances. But you can see it's really not that bad, and the 40 caliber is a powerful cartridge. The 40 is designed to approximate the 45 ACP, and in fact, some of the new loadings for the 40 Smith & Wesson, you have some pretty sporty loads there with 155 grain bullets running 1,200 feet per second. That is not a lightweight. So let's take a look at it over here on steel targets and on paper.
Friends, we'll come right back to our Smith & Wesson 411 after this local station break. Now, friends, everyone who's a shooter needs a subscription to Shotgun News, published 3 times monthly. It's the trading post for anything that shoots. Shotgun News, Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska. That zip code is 68902. Their phone number is area 402-463-4589. For MasterCard or Visa subscriptions only, call 1-800-345-6923. And in fact, while we're talking about getting subscriptions, here's one more that you definitely need. For the absolute best in monthly shooting magazines, turn to Shooting Times magazine, with all sorts of excellent features on handguns, rifles, shotguns, black powder, and others by some of your favorite gun writers, such as Dick Metcalf, Rick Jameson, and Bill Jordan, just to name a few. Each month you'll find interesting articles on guns, shooting, reloading, and new products for the firearms industry. That along with information on pending legislation of interest to all gun owners. For subscription information, call 1-800-727-4353. Shooting Times, the best there is.
Now then, friends, we're going to run a little experiment here for a moment and let you see the difference in both time and accuracy. Even though our target is up close, I think you'll be able to tell. We have our timer on here. We're going to shoot the Smith & Wesson 411. The first shot will be double action, the long trigger pull, The second shot will be single action, and then we'll do something else in just a moment. But let's see what kind of time it takes and see what the group looks like for 2 shots on paper. Punch the timer, push the safety off, semi-ready, and we'll apply our safety. Now friends, our timer told us, including my reaction time, those 2 shots took 68/100ths of a second, but they're about 2 1/2 inches apart. So we're going to take our marker and we'll put a little circle around this so we can compare it. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to shoot 2 shots with the gun already cocked, such as we would a single action semi-automatic, and let's see the difference. All right, friends, we're going to do something here, push our safety off. I'm going to go ahead and cock the pistol, and we're going to punch our timer and see what that looks like and see the difference. Now then, friends, our group didn't really change much as far as the size of the group. This is about, probably about a 1/2 inch or so better. Both of these shots were fired single action, but our time was quicker. It took 55/100ths of a second versus 68/100ths of a second. A little over a 1/10 of a second difference, which is not a whole heck of a lot of difference, but it does require some compensation. And it will show up when you're shooting steel targets or other multiple targets. You have to work at it just a little bit harder to get used to the transition from double action to single action. But that's really not too bad. We're going to mark .55 and both single action. Well, friends, I'll say again, the little Smith & Wesson 411, it's lightweight. It looks to be a rugged, certainly a ruggedly made pistol. I think it's going to shoot for a long time with just halfway decent care. They're reasonably priced. And let's do what the gun was designed to do. Let's shoot it. Now friends, today on our reloading segment, and I want to mention something at the very beginning, you notice that I have safety glasses on because anytime we work around gunpowder or around primers, it's always a good idea to have safety glasses on. As you've heard me say many times on the show and will hear me say many times again, there's just no sense in not being safe. And if you had a primer or something inadvertently go off, you might drop one on the floor, something could happen. We want to protect our eyes. Some people even use hearing protection. I'm not going to do that today, but I always, regardless of what I'm doing around the reloading bench, I always wear safety glasses. It's very important. Another thing we want to say, we don't store our gunpowder and our primers together. We keep them separate. There's just no sense in taking chances. Anyway, today we're going to look at the Dillon 550 press. This is a progressive reloading press. Now friends, you've heard me say many times on our program that I really think the Dillon line of progressive reloading presses is about as good as it gets, and I certainly still feel that way. This particular reloading press will load hundreds and hundreds of rounds per hour, and we've had our experience with them has been the rounds that come off this Dillon press, if it's adjusted properly, are every bit as good as factory ammunition. It has a number of very fine safety features. Now friends, the way this press works, you'll place a cartridge case, an empty cartridge case, in the first station, and it has a little clip there that holds it in place. And we'll get to this in just a minute on how it works, but what happens is, on your upstroke, you bring the lever all the way down. What will happen, the first case is resized and deprimed. The spent primer is pushed out of the bottom of the case. All right. At another station, it also goes up as we turn the turret on the press. The next cartridge case, at the same time now, is charged with powder and the case mouth is expanded. In the next station on the press, the bullet is seated. You insert the bullet in the case mouth, it's seated, and in the last station on the press, the case mouth is crimped. Now we're reloading a .45 ACP, a semi-automatic pistol caliber today, and we won't use the same type crimp that we used on the revolver. What we have is a taper crimp, and what happens,
the crimp is pushed in very tightly and securely around the bullet. And you do have some variation in how deep you will seat the bullets. Now, everyone needs a vernier caliper or something similar so you can match the proper overall length of the loaded round. This is very important because pressures can change on our reloaded case according to the depth that the bullet is seated in the case. So what we have with every stroke of our press here, you have all these things happening simultaneously. And what you have is every time you raise and lower the handle on the press, or lower and raise, and properly said, you will have a loaded round here that will be kicked off into the bin here. And it's really such a neat thing. These reloaders come in a box in pieces, and they come with a very fine instruction manual. And one is good, it does come in pieces for you to put together, because as you put the press together, it helps you understand what is happening and, in fact, how it works. Now, one advantage that the Dillons have, you have a tool head that can be removed. Now, friends, let's look at our tool head for just a moment. You can see we have the decapping and resizing die here. This, of course, is your powder measure, and the bottom of this die is what operates the powder measure. And then on the other side, we have our bullet seating die, and then we have our crimping die. So this is such a neat system. You can change calibers very quickly. You just change the shell plate, and if you have another tool head with other dies, you can slide this right in the press. So it works extremely well. It's a very fine system.
Now, friends, on our next segment, we're going to show you some loading on the fine Dillon reloading press. For more information on Dillon products, call them at 1-800-421-7632. You can even buy their reloading press on an installment plan, so give them a call and talk to them about it. Friends, we hope you've enjoyed this week's edition of the Shootin' Show, and remember, let those manufacturers and those firearms companies know how important our program is to you. So until next week, we look forward to seeing you again on the next Shootin' Show.